INN report for October 14, 2010. This is Lynn Wilson with today's top stories. A new CNN poll has found divided over whether Barack Obama or George Bush was the better president. By 47 to 45%, Americans said Obama was a better president than Bush, but that 2-point margin was down from Obama's 23-point advantage 1 year ago. According to an account in Bob Woodward's new book, Obama's War, Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari believes the U.S. was secretly behind a number of Taliban suicide attacks in Pakistan. Woodward states Zardari expressed this concern to then U.S. envoy Zalmay Khalilzad, saying it was part of a U.S. plot to destabilize Pakistan so that the U.S. could invade and seize its nuclear weapons. 5 NATO troops were killed in a spat of attacks in Afghanistan Thursday, including 4 in roadside bombings, bringing the total over the past 2 days to 11. This has been the deadliest year for international forces in the 9-year war. The escalating toll has shaken the commitment by many NATO countries, with calls growing to start drawing down troops quickly. Intelligence officials say 4 U.S. drone strikes Wednesday killed 11 militants in the North Waziristan region of northwestern Pakistan. In other actions, suspected militants killed 3 anti-Taliban tribal elders, the latest in a string of attacks against tribesmen who have dared to stand up to insurgents. The killings occurred after assailants ordered the tribesmen to halt at a checkpoint. Gaza's health ministry says 375 people have died due to the shortage of life-saving drugs. The medicines have sat just outside the border until most have passed their expiration date. But 10,000 donated coffins have been allowed in. By the end of September, more than 70% of medicines worth $25 million has been dumped. The U.S. urged NATO Thursday to invest in a missile shield at the meeting of foreign and defense ministers. The ministers discussed a new strategic concept that includes preventing missile attack from rogue states and cyber assaults. The U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates said linking NATO members into common defense network could cost between $100 and $140 million. Russia has told NATO it will not allow the allowance to transport military supplies to Afghanistan after scores of tankers were torched at the Pakistan border last week. Russia reportedly told NATO it would only allow non-military items through. Sources believe Russia's adamant stance stems from NATO interference in Eastern Europe and its military aid to Georgia, Ukraine, and Estonia. 90-year-old Helen Thomas, the legendary White House correspondent recently forced into retirement for saying Israel should leave Palestine, said Tuesday, quote, "You cannot criticize Israel in this country and survive." Thomas told an Ohio radio station her remarks were distorted for propaganda purposes to draw attention away from the occupation of Palestine. The website Politico reports House Minority Leader John Boehner donated $5,000 to Rich Iott, an Ohio Tea Party congressional candidate who has dressed as a Nazi officer during World War II reenactments. Iott has expressed, quote, admiration for Germany's ability to conquer Europe without mentioning the millions of Jews, gypsies, gays, and communists exterminated by the Nazis. Fellow Republicans are calling for Boehner to apologize. New details emerged Thursday in the case of the former Vice President Dick Cheney shooting a lawyer on a quail hunt. Harry Whittington says his injuries were more dire than previously disclosed. The 200 birdshot pellets that sprayed into Whittington caused his lungs to collapse and nearly punctured a cardiac artery in his neck. Whittington, who actually apologized to Cheney for being shot, has never received an apology from Cheney. International news. Following the euphoria of rescuing the 33 trapped Chilean miners, international work safety groups are pressing Chile to adopt international standards for mine safety and create a watchdog agency with teeth. Dick Blinn, spokesman for the International Federation of Chemical, Energy, and Mine and General Workers Union, says the San Jose mine accident was a sign of workplace safety culture needs to change. Blinn said, quote, Chile is a top-ranking country when it comes to mineral production, yet unions do not have a place at the table when it comes to safety. Blinn noted the San Jose mine was shut down for safety violations in 2006 and 7. Chilean safety officials pointed out at the time the mine needed a second entrance, but the company resumed operations without making any changes. The mayor of the nearby town of Caldera, Brunilda Gonzalez, alleged regulators were bribed to allow the mine to reopen. A new report Thursday details detainee abuse of Afghan prisoners by the U.S. at a secret jail inside the main U.S. military base in Afghanistan. The Open Society Foundation says the U.S. military operates a detention center next door to Bagram Airfield, and some former detainees allege they were held at a smaller, more isolated location at the base called the Black Jail. Former detainees say they were exposed to excessive cold and light, not given enough food or blankets, deprived of sleep, stripped naked under the guise of medical exams, kept from practicing their religion, and denied access to the Red Cross. The report says, quote, given the consistency of the account, the Open Society Foundation believes these are genuine areas of concern, adding, we're talking about run-of-the-mill detention conditions that, when seen as a whole, create a very troubling pattern. And now for the national news. Enrique Morones, founder of Border Angels, a nonprofit group that provides humanitarian assistance to migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexican border, says his mission is to save lives and end the, quote, rising hate in this country. Now, thanks to a new global positioning system application, travelers can find their way to the Border Angels water stations. All they have to do is say the word agua, Spanish for water, into their cell phones, which then vibrate, points them to the direction of a water station. Morones said the 1994 North American Free Trade Agreement caused an increase of migrants from Mexico to U.S. since farmers could no longer compete with U.S. agribusiness. Morones says the border wall between Tijuana and San Diego forces migrants to cross in a more remote and dangerous areas, adding the number of migrants who died crossing the border had increased from 1 or 2 every month to 1 or 2 every day. The Washington Post reports the effort to repeal the law barring gay men and lesbians from serving openly in the U.S. military is nearing a chaotic endgame involving fast-moving courts, a slow-moving military, a lame duck Congress, with the administration caught in the middle. The Obama administration, which is seeking to repeal the law, nevertheless is expected to appeal a ruling by a California federal judge who declared the policy unconstitutional. The Justice Department is genuinely required to uphold existing law and is expected to appeal ruling even when the president might agree with them. Former Solicitor General Walter Dellinger said it would be politically untenable to allow a single district judge to set law for a country in a case the Supreme Court has not heard. More than 75% of Americans think that the gay men and lesbians should be allowed to serve openly in the military. Federal authorities say a U.S. Army engineer took hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes for funneling Iraq reconstruction contracts to friends, building a $1.1 million mansion in Pennsylvania with the proceeds. John Marcus was arrested Wednesday and charged with money laundering and conspiracy to commit bribery and to defraud the U.S., charges that could land him in prison for 20 years. Marcus is alleged to have used his influence to secure contracts worth millions between 2007 and 2008 for British contractor Ahmed Nouri, who was also charged but is still on the run. According to the criminal complaint, Marcus demanded hundreds of thousands of dollars in kickbacks, which he used to build a palatial home near Nazareth, Pennsylvania. Prosecutors backed up their accusations with dozens of emails and other documents seized from Marcus's home and computers, some which quote the engineer asking for money. British intellectual Tariq Ali's new book, The Obama Syndrome: Surrender at Home, War Abroad, attacks Barack Obama as the messenger servant of countries' corporations, defending them against their critics and ensuring that no obstacles are placed in their way. The book treats Obama's election, policies, and popularity as a mental disorder gripping America, to be treated, if not cured, by a strong reminder of political realities. These include the unfulfilled promise to close Guantanamo, escalation of war in Afghanistan, the continued occupation in Iraq, and health care reform legislation drafted by former insurance industry lobbyists. Ali writes, Obama is an extremely intelligent human being, but not a progressive leader by any stretch of the imagination. Ali adds, to talk of betrayal is foolish, for nothing has been betrayed but one's own illusions. Thank you, and join us tomorrow, October 15th, for more Real News.